Well, the Iran war has delivered a harsh reality check to the United States' much-advertised missile shield in the Gulf, especially the THAAD system that was sold as a gold standard defense against Tehran's arsenal. For years, Washington promised that its high-end interceptors and radars would keep Gulf skies safe from Iranian missiles and drones. And Gulf monarchies signed huge checks and built their security strategies around this promise. But when Iran finally unleashed a large-scale retaliation, the test was real, brutal and public. And the very system which was meant to protect allies were left charred on the desert floor. What unfolded was not just another military confrontation, but it was a lesson in cost, volume, and most importantly, the limits of technology when it pushed to its breaking point. Well, the Middle East is now looking at burned THAAD radars and empty interceptor magazines and asking whether it paid billions for a leaky umbrella. For more than a decade, American officials and defense contractors pitched THAAD and Patriot as backbone of a regional shield against Iran. Lockheed Martin's Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, paired with THAAD Pack-3 batteries, was the centerpiece of this security umbrella that Washington promised to its Gulf allies. In fact, in May 2025, US President Donald Trump traveled to Riyadh to seal a massive arms deal with Saudi Arabia worth around $142 billion, packed with THAAD batteries, Patriot upgrades, and advanced missiles and drones. Well, this package was marketed as a way to modernize the Saudi military and protect it from Iran and its proxy, and other Gulf states also brought into similar systems. Across Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the UAE, American-made air defense and missile defenses became the trusted answer to the Iranian threat. In fact, Gulf governments believed they were buying time and security, expensive interceptors and powerful radars that would see and stop Iranian missiles before they can hit different sites in their cities. Well, the message from Washington was very clear. If you pay for the top-tier shield, Iran's firepower can be managed. Now, that promise was tested when the US and Israeli hit Iran, and Tehran answered with a wave of missiles and drones across the region. According to multiple reports, Iran fired more than 400 ballistic missiles and nearly 1,000 drones at the US and allied targets across 6 GCC states in a short span during the opening days of the conflict, hitting urban areas, energy facilities, airports, and military infrastructure. This was exactly the kind of scenario THAAD and Patriots were brought to handle. A mass strike from Iran. But instead of a clean intercept narrative, the world saw images and satellite pictures of burning hardware. In fact, multiple reports confirmed that THAAD ANTPY-2 radars in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE were hit. In fact, Patriot batteries, long criticized for mixed performance under saturation, again struggled when confronted with the sheer volume of incoming projectiles. Many missiles and drones were intercepted, but the numbers were overwhelming and interceptor stocks were quickly strained. Remember, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier had pointed out that Iran was turning out over 100 missiles a month, while American industry could only produce about 6 or 7 interceptors in the same period. A stark illustration of cost and production asymmetry. Now, the financial contrast was brutal for the US allies. Each THAAD battery is valued at $1 billion, with single radar costing roughly $300 to $485 million and each interceptor missile around $13 million. Some of these expensive systems were damaged or destroyed by relatively cheap drones and missiles, some of which cost a tiny fraction of the platform they were targeting. Now, in effect, Iran was trading low-cost attack systems for a very high-value US hardware in the Gulf. Remember, the US operates 8 THAAD batteries worldwide, including deployment in South Korea, and to plug the gaps, Washington even started pulling a THAAD battery out of South Korea to redeploy it to the Middle East, weakening deterrence in Asia to cover losses in a war that Seoul had not started. Now, looking at this situation, analysts warned that the United States was playing a shell game with scarce strategic assets, shifting them between theaters instead of having enough to sustain multiple crises. And for the Gulf states, this reinforced the feeling that their security insurance policy was less solid than advertised. Well, today Saudi Arabia and its neighbors are left counting the cost. 9-figure invoices, damaged bases, and an Iran that can keep producing missiles and drones faster and cheaper than America can ship in interceptors. The system that was supposed to be like an iron dome over the Gulf have looked more like a leaky shield, exposing how vulnerable even the most advanced kit become when faced with massive, continuous and low-cost fire. Now, it is important to highlight that the Iran war has not made THAAD or Patriot irrelevant, but it has stripped away the myth of invisibility that surrounded them in regional marketing pitches. And for Gulf leaders, the sight of charred THAAD site is not just a technical failure. It's a political warning that no imported system, however expensive, can fully offset an adversary that is ready to fight with numbers, patience, and asymmetrical tactics.